It makes a ton of sense. And let me ask you this question, because you mentioned RBF, reference-based pricing, RBP, whatever it is. Reference-based pricing, which basically you go out to a hospital system or wherever they get care, and you just get a fixed amount, get quote for whatever a knee surgery is going to cost, whatever insert procedure. And then you go off this price list, and then you bring that back for your actual clients, the company, to look at and say, if any of this happens, send your people here. This is what you're going to pay, right? Do you ever see anything that is more kind of boilerplate that can be applied to a lot of different areas? Or is everything you're doing very highly customized by whatever area that you're in and whatever local hospital system deals with those employers?
That's a good question. I think the answer almost certainly has to be that it's customized, because the success of these reference-based pricing plans, where we have a lot of direct contracts in place, that is something that is really local. And so, just as an example, I work remotely in North Carolina, and my company is located in Phoenix. And if I were to ever take on a client that was here local in North Carolina, I would have a lot of work to do on my hands to start developing those local relationships, knowing where to send people in a way that our deep knowledge of the Phoenix market just wouldn't translate into. Mm-hmm. So I think that it has to be very localized. The other thing that I would say, though, is that reference-based pricing is a little bit, since it's based on the Medicare reimbursement rate, it's a little translatable, whereas these more direct contracts that are just specific agreements, not necessarily tied to any percentage, whether that's 200 or 150% of the Medicare rate. I think that there's a slight difference. People tend to talk about direct contracts and reference-based pricing as though they're one and the same. I don't really agree with that. Direct contracting is the employer reaching out to a hand surgeon and saying, how much would you accept payment for these 2 carpal tunnel surgeries that we need done? And that's, to me, that's the apex of what this should be looking like. Because then it's the physician coming back and saying, gee, I've taken into account all of my costs, all of my expenses, and I'm building in a little bit of room for profit for my time, for my expertise, and I'm coming back with a figure. And there is no insurance relationship. There's no claims adjudication. There's no going back and forth fighting with the insurance company. There's no pre-authorizations. Gosh, I hate those things. There's none of that involved. It's just the care involved. And so I think that's a way better way of approaching it than simply going to a hospital system as an employer and saying, slapping your card on the table that says reference-based pricing and saying, we're going to pay this amount. I think that's something that there's a place for it, but only because of how much of a Wild West situation healthcare pricing has become. It's sort of employers' way of fighting back. But I wouldn't recommend it as a primary strategy. I think it's better to build out these direct contracts of care. I think that's the way to go. It's a better system.
So what I'm hearing is we got to put an APB out there for any type of specialist, including primary care and general practitioners, that, hey, there's a huge market for your services. Much rather contract and sign on to direct care specialty and direct primary care, rather than go around and try to negotiate with a bunch of these big hospital systems.